back to the AWS studio, where we have a fantastic discussion planned here today with three fantastic panelists from Celona, Stanford Healthcare, and AWS. We're going to talk neutral host network deployments. We're going to talk a fantastic customer story using integrated private wireless. And let's start with a round of intros. Over to you, Rajiv.
Ravi, good to be here. I'm Rajiv Shah. I'm the CEO of Celona, and we think of it as one of the most interesting enterprise-friendly private networks companies and part of the integrated private wireless program.
I'm Chris McKenna. I'm the head of business development for private wireless for AWS.
And Christian.
And I'm Christian Lindmark. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Stanford Healthcare and the Stanford School of Medicine.
I think we want to start with you again, Christian. Tell us a little bit more about Stanford Healthcare, about the entire network, and what prompted you to consider private wireless solutions?
Sure. Yeah, so Stanford Healthcare, we're an academic medical center located in the Bay Area in the state of California. We serve a population of about 8 million people, and every year we see about 1.5 million patients. The mission of Stanford Medicine, which I absolutely love, is it's healing humanity one patient at a time through science and compassion. And when you think about that, what does that mean? It means providing world-class patient care. It means educating the next generation of physicians and clinicians. And it means providing transformative research and discovery. So we have two main hospitals in the Bay Area, a half dozen ambulatory facilities, and then hundreds of clinics as well. So that's a little bit about Stanford and our space. We started our 5G journey back in 2019 or so. We opened a brand new hospital, 800,000 square feet, state of the art, every technology you can imagine, except for 5G, because it was a little early. And in California, you have to know from a technology perspective what you're doing a couple years in advance. And so in 2015, 2016, the industry really wasn't mature enough at that time. And so we kind of had to shelve that a little bit. A couple years later, we bought a community hospital in the East Bay. And they did not have a distributed antenna system and had terrible in-building coverage. And so we've been working with them over the last few years trying to solve that problem. And when we looked at the cost of a distributed antenna system, it was too expensive. And so we said, what else could we do? Is there a better way of doing this? And we went out to RFP and went through that process. And that's when we found Celona and AWS and started having conversations and deciding, hey, there's actually a way to do this at about 60% of the cost of a distributed antenna system. We can get all the carrier signals in the building. And in addition to that, we get the private 5G network as well. So we can take all of those other use cases and potentials and put those onto the private 5G network. So that's a little bit about how we got here today and what brought us to Barcelona, my first time at Mobile World Congress, and yeah, so excited to be here.
Wonderful, and again, welcome. I love how you capture that best of both worlds. I think that sentiment is exactly what we've been after with integrated private wireless from the start, right, Chris?
It is. It's 1 year on since we launched it here at Mobile World Congress last year. We're seeing very rapid growth. Our mission is to connect customers who are looking for private wireless solutions that really solve some of their real business problems and connect them to our partner community to go and deliver that built on AWS. And that's what our mission is in the IPW program, and you're seeing that here today.
So based on those early discussions with the likes of Rajiv and Christian, have we evolved our strategy for IPW over the past year?
The strategy remains the same. I think the momentum has really evolved. We can really see it in action this week, where the demos that we have in our demo studio, the comparison between the last few years, where they've been very forward-looking, they've been very proof of concept type of deployments. Today, they are real deployments, real customers solving real business problems. And that's the real evolution that we're seeing now. The market is maturing and the solutions are coming into market that our customers are now able to actually get into their hands and deploy on their premises.
And all three logos here are very much featured in our Digitizing Industry section of the show floor for us at AWS. And I encourage everyone to go take a look at that demo video that are tuning in after the fact here. But again, we were talking about that momentum. Strategy's the same. Momentum continues to accelerate, and momentum in part is driven by partners. So from the Celona perspective, can you tell us a little bit more about your neutral host and other deployments?
Yeah, absolutely. So Celona's idea was very straightforward, and it's actually reflected in some of the things Christian said. We saw a gap in the market where we were not seeing enough enterprise-friendly private wireless solutions that also solved the in-building cellular coverage problem. And that's what we've been after for 5 years. And this platform was built with that in mind. And I think as we have started to integrate that, the customers told us that there are also the need to integrate with compute and integrate with other use case applications. And that's where the AWS partnership is such a critical one. So we've been working on that consistently for 5 years. And to Chris's point, I think what's encouraging now is to see that vision turn into reality and to start to talk about real deployments, see it all come together. I think that's the really exciting part here.
Absolutely. So going back to you, Christian, as you think about the requirements you had for the solution particularly, you talked about the RFP, but as you think about what you were looking for in the context of your overall network and cloud strategy, what were some of the specific requirements that you were after?
I think the first thing is we wanted to find a partner that we could work with. Someone who was willing to realize that this was a new space, that we might have specific requirements, and that they would actually make a good partner. So that was requirement number one, and I think that's what we found in our partnership with Celona and AWS. We made that decision. So I think that was critical. This is a new space for us as well. So again, the neutral host aspect was really priority number one, but trying to determine what those other use cases were, we need someone to help us with that as well. So continue to have the discussions with that partner and look at what are those other use cases, what can we do? How do we take our critical, secure, clinical workflows and move those onto the private network? How do we look at our video systems, our telesitter, virtual nursing systems, and move those as well? So again, having that partner to help us work through these different use cases and figure out what's going to work was really, really important. I think the other piece was cost is a major issue for both healthcare systems. I mean, over 50% of hospitals right now are losing money. So I didn't want to also deploy a system that only worked for those hospitals that had money. I really wanted to find a partner that we could actually transform healthcare, and we could implement something that all hospitals across the country could afford and take the benefit of. And so for us, the ability to potentially look at rationalizing other infrastructure components, such as our RTLS systems, and actually move those onto the network. Again, reduce our Wi-Fi infrastructure. Those things are really important as we look at how we justify the cost of these new technologies.
I'm glad you touched on the TCO reduction being a key requirement you were looking for. Of course, that's a tremendous portion of the value proposition of IPW itself. But maybe turning it over to you, Chris, one thing I'm observing here, IPW was the outcome, not the initial design. And I think that's exactly where IPW best fits.
Yeah, and in Amazon, you'll always hear us, of course, talking about being customer obsessed, right? And we use these expressions like we work backwards from the customer. This is actually a real example of that in action, where there was no Celona on AWS option at the time, and the customer asked us to build it. So Christian said, we want to work with AWS, we want to work with Celona, will you guys work together to bring real value to us? And of course, it aligns perfectly with the IPW program, because in IPW, our customers are asking us to do what we do to bring to private wireless what we bring to every other service that we build, which is reducing cost, reducing complexity, and reducing time to market.
Right.
And Celona's solution, which is so enterprise friendly and so quick and easy to stand up, does exactly that and aligns perfectly with the IPW program. So we work backwards from what the customer asked us to do, and the result is we have a great solution now with our partner.
So in that architectural journey, Rajiv, from your perspective, what do you value most in cloud partners, and why was the Celona plus AWS solution such a perfect fit?
I think it does come to that customer obsession. It really is fascinating to see that sentiment play out in action that much. This exact example of literally one phone call from Christian to me, and then to me to Chris, to say this needs to happen. And I think within weeks we were in the IPW program. And that is not just on paper. That's an actual engineering design.
Right.
So I think that entire process, getting it going once a customer you realize the outcomes are there, that to me was the highlight. And I think from a design perspective, you often start to think, one of the great advantages we had, even though we were not on the IPW program, is we were always on the AWS cloud. And so we had taken a lot of design decisions which were very aligned already. And this just made it a very simple thing to then I add to that as well.
So I'm hearing you say a partner on IPW is just 2 phone calls away.
That is the way to do it.
That's right.
So if we think about then the deployment as a whole, Christian, what does this mean in the context of your overall transformation journey?
So we're at the early stages still. So I'm excited to come back here hopefully in a year and be able to show some real examples of what we've accomplished. But one of the biggest things that we've been thinking about as we continue this journey is what this impact has from a sustainability standpoint and what our potential is there. So what we've already calculated kind of without even thinking much about it is that we can reduce our cabling infrastructure costs in any new facility by 10%. Because we can take devices that are currently wired today and actually put them onto the CBRS network. So we can actually reduce that cabling infrastructure, which also reduces then my network infrastructure, which then reduces the size of my IDF rooms, the size of the power and cooling requirements I have. So this has a huge sustainability impact. And I think 10% is just the beginning. I think we could potentially get to 20 and even 30% reduction in that structured cabling need, which has significant impacts on the costs of the network gear to implement. So from a sustainability standpoint and that cost standpoint, I mean, this potentially is like a real game changer for us, and I think for healthcare in general, because we're talking numbers in the millions of dollars now in terms of potential savings. So that's really exciting.
And I love how you broke that down for us. And it's not just the cost savings, it's not just the opportunity to drive sustainability, it's the new use cases that are being unlocked. There are a few examples that you can share of opportunities and the how behind ways you can use the underlying private network.
So our initial ones, I think I mentioned earlier, is we're going to take our secure clinical communication system. So we have over 4,000 phones that we give out to staff daily for secure clinical communications, and they're currently using the Wi-Fi network. It works, but there are challenges because that's a competing network with all the other devices that are connected to it, including all of our patients and the patients' families that are connected to. So we can take all of that traffic and we can move it over to the private 5G network. And then we have all of the video systems as well that we're running, our telesitter, virtual nursing platforms. We can take all of those signals and move those over too. So I think the resiliency of the network and that additional bandwidth is really critical, and that's what we're really excited about. RTLS is another one I mentioned earlier. So we have a separate RTLS network that's in place right now, very expensive to implement and to maintain. And if we can actually look at bringing that technology and move that onto the CBRS network too, I mean, that's a huge savings and opportunity. So there are a lot of potentials for this, and I think this is just the beginning. So I think once it starts, right, it's going to be like a snowball effect. And they're going to continue to build, and I'm sure there are things that we're not even thinking about right now that some of my teams, whether they're in the biomed department or my customer experience teams, they're going to be thinking about, hey, how can we take advantage of this network that now resides there? So,
great use cases, and I love how you talked about some of the currencies, the bandwidth, the resiliency. So Rajiv, from your perspective, as you think about Celona and the solution you've developed, why, in your view, why are private networks uniquely positioned to address the challenges and use cases that Christian highlighted?
I think a lot of it comes from the inherent technology. You're using cellular technology, which has been baked to be this reliable and so on. So I think you get a lot of that. And when you combine that with a platform like Celona that's so much focused on enterprises, one of the things we always love when we hear these type of examples is one of our theses was the enterprise cellular networks are going to be a bit unique because they won't just ask for voice and data. Just like Christian said, they're going to say, we want secure clinical communications, we want video, we want location, and then many other applications. So you're going to literally need tens of virtual overlays on this network that you're now creating. And so I think the ability to create a platform that can deliver that seamlessly to the enterprise customer with that friction-free experience, where you just on demand get a service when you need it. I think that's the potential of private wireless.
Absolutely. So flexibility and service delivery and overlays, that ties in perfectly, Chris, to the overall value proposition of IPW itself: cost reduction, reducing complexity, and speeding up time to market. Right?
It does. And what makes us most excited here is that throughout the last few years we've been evolving our strategy for IPW, and it's really moved from science experiments has really moved from there to customers saying, I've got a real business problem I need to solve here. I need to get business value out of whatever I deploy. And the moment you start having those conversations, you start going down a verticalized path where the needs of a healthcare environment are not necessarily the same as the needs of a mine or a port or a sports stadium. So they are all different. And what we're most excited about here is we're starting to see the healthcare vertical start to come through in some of the real clinical use cases that are specific to that vertical. So we're really excited to see what Stanford do. We're really excited to bring some of the use cases that we have to Stanford as well, so they can easily consume. And part of the IPW program is all about bringing applications and application partners and all of our cloud services and all of our edge services to our customers so that they can consume them into those exciting new use cases, some of which we don't even know exist yet.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited to see the use cases that come forward as well. In our digitizing industries section of the FIRA, we have, of course, the Celona and IPW deployment, but we also have all sorts of different medical training applications working with an ISV called LevelX. So many different opportunities to embed these use cases atop the private network itself. I want to look forward to what's next, but I want to close with, what have we learned through this journey? Maybe just go around the horn, starting with you, Rajiv.
I think we've touched upon it a little bit. Starting with a real business need shortens the journey for everybody. I think when we are not just looking for technology for the sake of technology, but instead solving real problems, I think you can get there very fast.
I think from my perspective, the network is a really critical enabler to so many amazing things that can be done at the edge. So we're really excited that we can partner with guys like Celona who can bring the network in, have our customers deploy private 5G, get that platform in place so that we can bring in all of the use cases, the power of the cloud that sits over the top. We've seen AI come in. We've seen so many use cases that are leveraging compute in the cloud. We're building AI models in the cloud, and we're deploying those at the edge. There's so many new things that we're doing in this space. So as Christian said, really excited to come back next year and see just how much of this we managed to deploy.
5G is real. I mean, I was skeptical at first. When we started this journey, we started looking at it, I was a little skeptical, but to see it actually, in play and working, like it is here. I think the second thing is you got to surround yourself with good people and good partners. And so we've been very fortunate with that, but I think that is really critical. As a healthcare owner, we don't know it all. We've got to make sure that we have the right partners to help us on this journey. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I want to echo that sentiment. 5G is real indeed. I want to thank you for the embrace of this next frontier of private wireless networking. We can't wait to be on the journey with you. Great example of this tri-party customer collaboration with partners. And we hope to see you again in Barcelona next year, Christian.
Thank you.